Hi everybody, hope you're all okay. Really sorry I couldn't make it there today. Had family commitments that I really couldn't change, so really sorry, but I'm here in imagery. That's better than nothing at all, isn't it? And all you PR people know that imagery is everything, so let's fire away. Okay, now Mary-Louise has sent me some questions that a lot of your customers out there are asking, which are more hairdressing related, so I'm going to try my best to answer all of those. Starting with the first question, which was, how can you tell if a fringe or a slightly more dramatic hairstyle will change, or hair change will suit you before having a haircut? Same with colour, a dramatic change in colour, lighter to darker, will suit the customer. Well, firstly, let me say that if you're not trained in this sort of area, it's quite difficult to advise on anything dramatic. So the first rule is, you know, just keep it nice and simple and purely say to them that it is your own idea on how their hair would look, as opposed to, you know, this is the right thing to do. Okay, what we would generally do in the salon, especially if it's, let's say, for a fringe, it's a clever little trick here. So as long as someone's got long enough hair, you take a U section, leave the hair around the sides, comb the hair through, then take it back up on itself, and just flip it over. Obviously you can only do this if the hair is long enough, but that just gives people an idea of what they would look like with a fringe. Alternatively, and this is what I think is a better idea, and also wouldn't be dependent on the hair length, is just to get some hair wefts, or we have these colour swatches, and I mean, you know, we can get these, I can get some of these for you, or they can be arranged for you to have some of these, and just get the most regular colours. And again, you know, you can fan them out over there, and that gives you a good idea on whether a fringe would suit. Alternatively, you know, we have wigs as well. It's not as easy for you to use the wigs because you would need so many, but that is another option, especially if people are going from long hair to short. When it comes to colour, again, the same thing. We can use these wefts of hair, and you can just place it against the skin. That's how we determine whether a colour's going to suit someone or not. Put it against their skin tone, and generally, you know, you should be able to go, yeah, that definitely suits your skin tone, or that doesn't. Now, if that all sounds too complicated, don't even attempt to try and advise the customer on it. Just tell them to go and see their hairdresser, basically. Because again, it is very subjective. You know, what suits the individual is in the eye of the beholder, as opposed to it being, you know, oh yeah, I think this looks really great. So I hope that's answered your first question. Let's move on to question 2. Okay, how do we minimise damage caused by blow drying and straightening the hair? Okay, well, I'm a firm believer. Obviously, I use this equipment every day, but I think the more professional the equipment, the better job you can do. So if you're going to buy a hairdryer that's the most powerful that you can afford, and the same with straighteners. Go with ceramic straighteners and the highest temperature that they get to. That might sound a little odd, thinking, okay, why would you use one which was the hottest? But actually, the hotter, especially with straighteners, the hotter they are, the less time they're spent on the hair. If you're straightening the hair, you literally just go over the hair once. That's it. Don't repeat going over it. So if you're using straighteners, wait till they get to the right temperature and go over the hair once. Okay, so that helps to minimise the damage. When you're blow drying, make sure you take at least 60% of the moisture out of the hair first, just with your hands, just rough drying, before you even get a hairbrush or whatever you're going to style your hair with to do it. That's 2 good reasons. Now, obviously, the most important reason is the products that you're using. They're going to minimise damage, either heat-resisting products or your general ritual that you're going to use that's going to keep your hair in good condition. So that's how I would approach that area, and keeping the hair in best condition and to minimise the damage to it. Okay, let's move on to the next question. How can you prevent split ends? That's a good question. The ends of your hair are really, really delicate. The longer your hair is, the more delicate your hair is. Split ends occur just through misuse of styling products, combing your hair, damaging by combing, snagging, or just purely that the hair's been on your head for too long. I mean, your hair can remain on your head for up to 7 years. So that's a long time if you're not taking care of it. So to minimise splitting of the ends, always, and especially when the hair is wet, comb the hair from the ends to the root. Okay, so you're not starting to comb from here down, you're combing from the ends if it's tangly and working your way up the hair. That's the correct way to do it. Definitely no snagging, so if you do find that you're here and you're tugging at it, section the hair off and then again start from the ends and work your way to the root, especially when the hair is wet. And that goes for the same if you're using a brush, from the ends to the root. So I think that's pretty much, again, obviously, if you're using the correct products, that's going to minimise that. But generally, as a basic rule of thumb, it's the way that you treat the hair, and especially when it's wet. Right, next question was, how do you stop hair becoming oily? That's a good question. A lot of clients suffer with oily scalps and oily hair, and it tends to make the hair flat, just basically stuck to your head. And the oil that's generated from your scalp is produced by the sebaceous gland. Now this gland lives just beneath the surface of your skin on your scalp, and it produces sebum or oil to protect your hair and to stop your hair and scalp from losing too much moisture. So that's how it happens, and like anything to do with the body, it's all very individual. Some people produce more than others. So this is the way that I deal with it in the salon, just a few small steps that generally try to help control the condition. But if it is excessive, then really you do need to go and see your GP or a dermatologist. So the first thing that I would suggest is when you are shampooing your hair, really only use tepid water, not hot water at all, just tepid water. And rather than going into your scalp as you would do normally, rubbing firmly with your fingers, just purely use the palms of your hand and do not rub very hard. Okay, so you're actually the pressure of where you're applying your hands is more even, so you're not stimulating that gland at all, because heat and pressure stimulates the gland to produce more oil. Okay, then rinse your hair out, and again with the conditioner, you're only applying the conditioner to the mid-lengths and the ends. You're keeping well away from the scalp. So once you apply a small amount of conditioner, and whatever product you're using, we would say volume advanced generally if the hair is oily, size of a pea, emulsify, work all the way through mid-lengths ends, comb through starting from the ends, moving up to the mid-lengths, and then rinse that off again with tepid water. Okay, if you're using styling products, unless they're specifically designed to give root lift, again keep well away from the scalp area. Pretty much apply mid-lengths and ends and blow dry. And the same goes with brushing. If you're brushing or combing your hair, literally keep away from any sort of stimulation onto the scalp. It's going to create more activity with the sebaceous gland, and that's going to produce more oil. So again, leave the scalp well alone, and when you do, obviously just apply light pressure. And yes, a cool rinse does help, but I wouldn't use too much hot water throughout the whole process, and we tend to find that really does help. Obviously using the correct ritual is going to help as well, and as I said, volume tends to normally go with oily hair. Okay, another question we get asked an awful lot, this one comes up all the time by pregnant women, is it normal for you to lose lots of hair after you've given birth? Well, yeah, the answer is yes. What tends to happen is, during pregnancy, because of the massive change in hormone levels, your hair stops shedding, so it goes through the
Resting.
Your hair goes through the resting stage. So instead of it shedding, it does just stay in your scalp and in your hair feels thicker, and actually, you know, women when they're pregnant go, oh, you know, my hair's fantastic. So that's what happens at that level. Now, after childbirth, up to 12 weeks after childbirth, you then go into the shedding stage. Now, this is usually a lot later than it would be ordinarily, and you can lose up to 500 hairs a day, whereas generally, normal hair, you can lose up to 60 to 100 hairs a day. So it is quite alarming when you're brushing your hair out and you're finding, you know, that lots of hairs coming out. There's no real way around this. There's no way to avoid this. You know, you do just have to let it take its course. And generally, after 6 months, everything returns back to normal, as probably your hormone levels do as well. If you do find after that time that you're still shedding a lot of hair, then you really need to contact your GP or a dermatologist just to make sure that everything is okay. Also, you find, I've had this a lot, when people have had children, their hair doesn't always return in exactly the same state as it would do normally. Sometimes people's hair is a little bit curlier, sometimes it's slightly changing colour, so that is all quite normal. But it is, you know, it can be alarming if you're losing 60, 100 hairs a day and then all of a sudden you're losing 500 hairs a day. But what you've got to remember is, all through your pregnancy, you didn't lose that hair, so it's just the process clumped together. So it is perfectly natural. Okay, when people colour their hair, is there a period of time where they should return to their normal colour to regain strength back on their hair, or are treatments like RHT sufficient? Well, yes, in my view, all the colours that we use in the salon, and as long as we're using them in conjunction with the correct treatment shampoos, then perfectly okay. I mean, I've got clients who have been having their hair coloured for 25 years and actually their hair is in better condition than some clients I have with virgin hair. So there's no reason for you not to, you know, to give your hair a rest. You know, you're treating the hair that's outside the scalp, and as long as you're using the right products, there's no reason why you shouldn't keep colouring the hair. And as I said, I've seen for myself, people's hair can actually stay in better condition if you're using the right colour preparations. If you're using it in conjunction with RHT, or certainly with colour sustaining products, which I've found have been a revelation at helping to keep colouring, then no issues with that at all. Okay, the next question is, does cutting the hair help the condition of the hair, or is it just aesthetic? The answer to that is yes, cutting hair does help the condition of the hair. I've already mentioned before that the ends of the hair are very delicate, they're prone to damage, and in fact the whole of your hair is prone to damage on a day-to-day basis, whether it's environmental, whether it's through styling products, whether it's through heat, whether it's the sun or holidays, so it is being damaged constantly. I don't know of any single person, I'm just running through my head if there are any customers, no, not one single person that I would say could go for longer than 10 weeks without having a trim and their hair stay in the same condition. So it's not really aesthetic. We're not talking about a hairstyle, we're talking about the condition of the hair. So I wouldn't ever go for longer than 10 weeks without having a trim, even if it's only a centimetre. If someone has always had dry, normal hair and it has now become greasy, how do we fix it? Is it because the hair is in bad condition and trying to repair itself? No, I don't think that is the fact at all, that it's trying to repair itself, because actually, as I explained before, the sebaceous gland produces sebum that protects the scalp and the hair follicle, whereas if it's damaged beyond that, there's nothing really that the scalp or the internal organs are going to do. So no, I don't think that is the case. If it's become oily, generally I would say it's dietary. You know, people are either eating the wrong thing or something's happening to their hormone levels. And again, that can be helped by, we went through the oily hair question before, not using too much hot water, not massaging the scalp too much. But really, I tend to find it's more dietary. I think you're going to find that it's something that people are putting inside them, or whether it's medication, and in which case you need to refer to the oily hair scenario. And hormone changes do happen, as you well know, so that could be the answer to that. If you get no joy by using the simple techniques that I've described, then again, go and see your GP or dermatologist. Okay, if somebody has had chemotherapy, would you recommend dry recovery or damage reverse with RHT? Okay, in my experience, and I've seen quite a few people who have had chemotherapy because I do wig styling for these people. The hair and the scalp, well, generally the whole of the being becomes completely dehydrated with chemotherapy. So I would always recommend using dry recovery shampoo and conditioner with RHT as opposed to RHT itself. So you would try to replenish as much moisture back into the hair and scalp rather than damage reverse. So that would be my suggestion, dry recovery. If the hair is fine, limp, straight, but the client wants curl volume, what can we recommend on how to achieve this alongside their recommended products? Well, again, the first and foremost is that you obviously recommend the right products, being Volume Advance. You tell them exactly how much they need to use, not to overload the hair. And then from a styling point of view, it is dependent on hair length. If you're looking at somebody with shortish hair, 2-3 inches, and they're going to blow dry their hair with a brush, go back to the scenario of taking a lot of the moisture out of the hair first, so 60% dry, then apply your styling product, whether it be thickening, volumizing spray, or whether it be the thickening glaze, and then you would go in with your brush, let's say on short hair with a brush. Now, I always say to my clients it's vitally important to use the right type of brush if you're trying to create volume and trying to curl the hair. So if the hair is 3 or 4 inches long, these are the types of brushes you need. They need to be round for starters, because you need to curl the hair. I mean, this is obviously much longer hair. So you need to curl the hair, and they need to be of a certain type of brush that you can actually grip onto the hair with. There's no point in the hair just slipping through. So that would be my first port of call, and again using a good dryer. A much easier method, again, if you dry the hair off probably a little bit more than that, and put in Velcro rollers. Now, Mary Louise will tell you that we use these a lot when we're styling the models on QVC. You can buy them anywhere, they're easy to buy, they're cheap. You can put them in the hair when it's pretty much just a little damp rather than completely damp. And then you don't even need a clip to put them in. That's it, just leave it in the hair, and then you can either blast it with a hairdryer for a few minutes, or you can walk around having your breakfast or your cup of coffee and then just pull them out. They don't need a clip, they don't stick into the hair, they don't tear the hair, and you get massive volume from doing it that way. So they are 2 good tips that I would use. But the brushes especially, people try to get volume in their hair with a flat brush, with a brush like this. There's no way you're going to curl short hair with a brush like that. So that's 2 good tips. Okay, next question. Why is home colouring bad for your hair? Okay, now let's get this straight from the word go. Colouring hair is a science. Yeah, it takes quite a lot of training. I think the problem with home colouring is a little bit of knowledge, and someone with goodwill tries to perform this fantastic colour change, and then it goes drastically wrong. I've got probably, in the salon here, I've probably got 120 different tones that I can mix together, and probably 8 or 9 different strengths of activator to mix those tones and to make them work to get exactly the right type of colour and finished effect. Now, you're never going to be able to achieve that at home. So there's no comparison on that level. But I also realise, obviously, not everybody can get to the salon and pay salon prices, and there's no reason why performing some of these things at home shouldn't work. Generally, you'll find colours. I mean, I know very little about colours on the open market that you can buy from, you know, your supermarket or from the chemist. But what I do realise is that they are much more intensive. They're much stronger because they're having to work on so many different hair types. So if your hair is coarse, fine, dark, red, you know, someone's likely to pick up that same colour and make it try and work on their hair. So you're already working at a slight disadvantage. So really my advice would be, if anybody's going to do any of their colouring at home, they should try and minimise the shade difference they're trying to do. So say if your hair is this colour, you know, say it's a medium brown, then you would only try to go one shade lighter or one shade darker. That way you're not going to damage the hair very much, and you're going to be able to get a decent result. If you're trying to cover grey, whatever you're trying to achieve, as soon as you're trying to change 2 to 3 levels, then you're getting into an area where it's going to be far more difficult. The colour that you're applying as well is totally dependent on the colour that you have on your head. So if you've got 3 different colours on your head and you're putting one colour over the top, it's going to take in 3 different ways on that head. You know, and if you look at the colour of the model on the front of the box and she's a honey blonde and you're a medium brown, there's no way even the best professional in the world is going to be able to get with that product your hair that colour. So basically the advice is, it's not bad for you, it's not a bad thing to do, and you can do it, but just don't veer by a shade or so more either side of your natural colour, and tend to use the warmer or neutral tones as opposed to the ashy tones, because that's where people really do cock up. Or even better, tell them to go and see your hairdresser. Okay, next question. What determines hair colour? Not the genetics, but the makeup of the hair. Is it a pigment? And if so, where is this in the hair follicle? Okay, the colour pigment itself lives in the cortex of the hair. So you have 3 parts of your hair. You have the cuticle, which is the outer layer. You have the cortex, which is by far the biggest part of your hair shaft and the most important part of your hair shaft. That's where the colour pigment's found. That's where all your elasticity, strength, moisture is kept in that area, and then the medulla. And not actually everybody has a medulla, but they're the 3 areas of hair. So the pigment's found in the cortex of your hair, and that's what gives you your natural colour. Now, if the cuticle of your hair, the outer layer, isn't managed and kept in good condition, then the next area to disintegrate is the cortex. So that's why we're always going on about the cuticle being in good condition and the cuticle remaining flat. That's key to the health of the cortex. So that's why we use conditioners. That's why we always try to keep the cuticle flat. You need to look after the cuticle so it will look after the cortex. How often should you get a haircut if you have longer hair? About every 5 minutes. No, I'm only joking. I would say, if we say, let me give you this example. Hair grows on average 1 centimetre every 4 weeks. So if you were to get your hair cut, if you have longer hair and you were to get it cut every 10 weeks, and even after 10 weeks you had 1 centimetre cut off, your hair would still be 1.5 centimetres longer than it was when you started out. So does that make sense? If you have your hair cut every 10 weeks, it should on average grow 2.5 centimetres. So even if you have a trim in 10 weeks time and you just take off 1 centimetre or less, it is going to grow. And I would always advise and recommend you go no longer than 10 weeks, even if you're just taking off 0.5 centimetre. You know, you need to keep those ends trimmed, otherwise the hair won't grow, the ends split, the end starts splitting all the way up the hair, and then you end up having to cut 3 or 4 inches off. So, you know, you're never going to grow your hair if you don't keep it trimmed. And I think that's it. I don't think there's any more questions. I've said to Mary Louise, I'm more than happy if you get any questions, that I'm always available for you to email me, and you know, I'll guarantee I'll get back to you within 48 hours as long as I've got an internet connection. But I'm more than happy, any questions from your customers that you get, no problem at all. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this evening even more. And if you make sure you please save me a glass of champagne for next time. So have a good time, all of you, and see you all soon.